This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.
(6:45). This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. The morning news edited by Danushka Madhavala, read by Soundi Thavam. The President to meet the future members next Thursday. Investor-centric new policies and laws will be introduced. Iran donates essential medicines to Sri Lanka. The Treasury gets 160 million rupees from sugar import fine. Parliament debate over Express Pearl disaster will take place today as well. In foreign news, violence and mass arrests as former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan charged with corruption. In sports, Chelsea thrash Leicester to move off top spot. President Ranil Wickremesinghe will meet the Federation of University Teachers Association to discuss their issues next week. The President's trade union advisor, Saman Ratnapiriya, said accordingly, the discussion between the representatives of the future and the President will be held on Thursday, May 18th at 4 p.m. at Temple Trees. The university lecturers refrained from evaluating the advanced level answer script evaluation for months and wanted to have a discussion with the President. The university lecturers informed that they are ready to start the evaluation of answer sheets only if the President gives them a hearing. However, after about 2.5 months, in the face of public agitations against University Teachers Association, they began the evaluation of A-level scripts from last Monday. The State Minister of Investment Promotion, Dilum Amunugama, recently revealed that a committee of experts has been appointed to introduce a stable investment policy and a unified investment law to make Sri Lanka the easiest and most attractive country in the Asian region for investment. He announced the move during a meeting held at the Ahmedabad International Port. Amunugama said in a very short period, the various services of the Sri Lanka Board of Investment have been made more flexible. Several new steps have already been taken for that. State Finance Minister Dr. Ranjit Siambalapichya said that the company, which had proven guilty of importing 607.5 metric tons of brown sugar to Sri Lanka in violation of the Customs Ordinance and the Import and Export Control Act, has credited the relevant fine to the Treasury. Accordingly, the State Minister said a total fine of 160 million rupees has been credited to the Treasury. He said a case was filed in courts regarding the incident, and according to its verdict, the relevant company has made arrangements to pay the entire fine. It was discovered by the customs officials recently that the brown sugar, which had been restricted to import, had been imported under the pretense that it was white sugar. This news broadcast comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.
People's Bank Excelsior. Live the life you want.
The Parliament debate over the Express Pearl disaster will take place today as well. The Parliament session was adjourned for 10 minutes yesterday due to a tense situation during the debate over the MV Express Pearl ship disaster. Parliament was adjourned after a heated exchange of words took place between Justice Minister Vijayadasa Rajapaksa and MP Tushara Indunil over the matter. Temporarily adjourning Parliament, Speaker Mahindayapa Abeyewardena also called for an urgent party leaders' meeting. It is reported that the party leaders are expected to decide whether or not to take up for debate the MV Express Pearl ship disaster. The Tourism Development Authority says a cable car project has commenced to promote tourism in the Nuwara district. One of the main foreign income sources of the country is tourism. Taking this into consideration, the chairman of the authority, Sampath Fernando, said this project will attract more tourists to the district. The preliminary activities to commence this cable car facility are being carried out at present. The Tourism Development Authority further said other supportive entertainment facilities will also be developed under this project. That concludes local news.
People's Bank Excelsior, a comprehensive banking services package with a branded checkbook as well as debit and credit card exclusively for you. People's Bank Excelsior, for professionals who dare to dream.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
The Iranian embassy in Sri Lanka last week donated essential medicines worth $1.8 million, including cancer drugs, to Sri Lanka. Health Minister Kele Rambakwella received the donation symbolically from the Iranian ambassador in Colombo, Hashem Ashtazada, and came to you in the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
On to Watchlight. The Department of Motor Traffic will launch a special program for three-wheelers from today. The DMT Commissioner General Nishanta Veerasinghe stated that a pilot program will be launched to convert petrol-powered three-wheelers into electric three-wheelers. He further said that under the pilot program, steps will be taken to initially convert 300 petrol-powered three-wheelers, and came to you in Watchlight. On to a bulletin of world news in the headlines. Violence and mass arrests as former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan charged with corruption. Israel and Gaza militants in heaviest fighting for months. U.S. border crisis. El Paso braces for worst as Title 42 deadline looms. Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan has pleaded not guilty to corruption charges a day after his arrest sparked nationwide protests. 8 people have died nationwide in the protests and about 1,000 have been arrested, the police say. The army is being deployed in some areas and has stemmed a stern warning after crowds attacked its properties. Mr. Khan's arrest dramatically escalated tensions between Mr. Khan and the military at a time of economic crisis. Conviction would disqualify the former cricket star Prime Minister from 2018 to 2022 from standing for office, possibly for life. Elections are due later this year. Israel says Palestinian militants in Gaza have fired more than 460 rockets at it and that its military has hit over 130 militant targets in Gaza in the heaviest fighting in 9 months. 6 people were killed and 45 injured in Gaza, local medics say. Several were hurt rushing to shelters in Israel, where most rockets have been intercepted or fell in open areas. It comes a day after 15 Palestinians were killed in Israeli strikes on Gaza, including 3 Islamic Jihad leaders. The Islamic Jihad, which is the second biggest militant group in the territory after Hamas, had sworn to avenge their deaths. In a televised address on Wednesday night, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warned that Israel's campaign is not over. A record number of migrants, more than 10,000, were recently apprehended at the US-Mexico border in a 24-hour period, fueling fears over what comes next when the controversial immigration policy expires this week. Nowhere are the realities of what some have termed a border crisis more evident than in the Texas city of El Paso. Here, migrants, many of them confused about the impending rule changes, have been left sleeping rough in makeshift campsites on city streets over the last several days. Several thousands were camped out earlier this week around a single church in the city centre. Back to the headlines of the world news. Violence and mass arrests as former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan charged with corruption. Israel and Gaza militants in heaviest fighting for months. U.S. border crisis. El Paso braces for worst as Title 42 deadline looms. That concludes this bulletin of world news.
Development news.
The Agriculture Minister Mahinda Amaraveera said that all stakeholders in the poultry industry should work together to eliminate the shortage of eggs. He was speaking at a meeting held recently at the Ministry office. During the meeting, all participants agreed to work together until the shortage was resolved. Representatives of the Poultry Owners Association, Trade and Consumer Affairs Ministry, Agriculture Ministry, Livestock Development State Ministry, Animal Production and Health Department, and officials of the Sri Lanka Customs participated in the meeting and came to you in development news. On to sports. Chelsea thrashed Leicester City to move a point behind Women's Super League leaders Manchester United with a game in hand. The Blues were 3-0 up after 32 minutes following goals from Guro Reiten, Erin Cuthbert and Pernille Harder. Denmark's Harder added a second just before half-time as Emma Hayer's side further exerted their dominance. Goals from Lauren James and Jelena Kankovic rounded off the success in the second half. And Andy Murray's recent revival on clay was halted by defeat in an eventful Italian Open first-round match against home favourite Fabio Fognini. The 35-year-old Briton, who won a challenger title in France last week, lost 6-4, 4-6, 6-4 in Rome. Fognini, 35, showed his classy ball striking to win the first set before Murray eventually clinched a second set that had 7 breaks of serve. But the Italian rediscovered his level, serving clinically to win the decider. Murray was playing on the Rome clay for the first time since 2017 when he was the defending champion and ranked as the world number 1. All that came to you in sports news. We look at business news next.
Go ekak tiyana youth eකට life එකේ change එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න ඇස් වහගෙන දැකපු ගීන හැබැයි කරන්න youth එකට නියමෙට set වෙන friendship එක මෙන්න.
The all-new NSB Ithru Mithru account, NSB IM, a plan for your dream.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Google has announced it is rolling out artificial intelligence to its core search engine. The move comes after Microsoft incorporated ChatGPT into its Bing search engine earlier this year. Search Generative Experience, which will be part of Google, will craft responses to open-ended queries, the company said. However, the system will only be available to a limited number of users and is still in experimental phase. That's business news. Economic news up next.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Go ekak tiyana youth එකට life එකේ change එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න ඇස් වහගෙන දැකපු ගීන හැබැයි කරන්න youth එකට නියමෙට set වෙන friendship එක මෙන්න.
The all-new NSB Ithru Mithru account, NSB IM, a plan for your dream.
On to economic news, the prices of milk, airline tickets and new cars fell in the US last month, helping drive inflation to its lowest rate in 2 years. Inflation, the pace at which prices rise, was 4.9% in the 12 months to April, official figures show. That was down from 5% in March and marks the 10th month in a row that price rises have slowed. The fall comes after the US Central Bank had sharply raised interest rates to try to control inflation. Inflation in the US peaked last June at 9.1%, the highest since it is 1981. And that's economic news.
Weather report.
Showers or thundershowers will occur at times in the western, Sabragama, central, northwestern and southern provinces. Fairly heavy showers, about 75 millimeters, are likely at some places in the western, Sabragama and northwestern provinces and in the Kandy, Nuwara, Galle and Martara districts. Several spells of showers will occur in the northern province. Showers or thundershowers will occur at several places elsewhere over the island, particularly during the afternoon or night. Strong winds about 40 to 45 kilometers per hour can be expected at times over the western and coastal areas and along the western slopes of the central hills. To conclude this bulletin of news, a recap of the headlines. The President to meet future members next Thursday. Investor-centric new policies and laws will be introduced. Iran donates essential medicines to Sri Lanka. The Treasury gets 160 million rupees from sugar import fine. Parliament debate over Express Pearl disaster will take place today as well. Violence and mass arrests as former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan charged with corruption. And Chelsea thrashed Leicester to move point off top spot. With that, we conclude this morning's news broadcast.